Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Grogan. This particular lesson is going into an introduction to HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language. This is Unit 2, Lesson 2. All right. And this may not be an assignment per se, but there is a lot of important information on this that will help you understand the next several lessons within HTML that will count as assignments. Eventually, we'll also be going into CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets. I'm going to be going into that in a separate video. But in order to understand how to do the HTML assignments as well later on, as well as CSS, is to basically get an overview of how code.org works and how the web lab works. All right. Because it can be a little confusing at first. And really with HTML, it can be a little difficult to understand at first if you're not at all familiar with it. HTML is a programming language. It's a very common programming language that's used in a lot of websites. Right. And as as I've told you in class before, there are many different types of programming languages. We're going to be touching on HTML, and eventually we're going to be touching on JavaScript. But those are not the only two. There are many others. All right. But HTML is one of the oldest ones and one of the more common ones. All right. And what we're going to do in this video is I'm just going to go over the basics of lesson 2. As I said before, a lot of the information in here will help you understand what you need to do. And, when we get to lesson 3 and the other lessons after it. All right. Like I said, this particular lesson just kind of gives you a general overview of how the web lab works on code.org. All right. And keep in mind that this is, code.org is not the only place on the World Wide Web in which you can implement HTML code. There are a lot of other apps and sites that you can use, but just the way how it works on code.org is something that I do need to at least explain to you how to do it, because this is stuff that you will be graded on. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this particular lesson and go through each of the sections. There are 2 sections on here in which there are videos. I'm going to skip those, but I would recommend that you play them on your own time. Both of those videos are only like 2 minutes long. So, but they also kind of give a very general overview of what this is all about. All right. This video goes a lot more in depth, which you will need to know. All right. So this first section here, all right, goes kind of gives an overview of the assignment itself. It also has vocabulary and new code that gets introduced. All right. You'll see this on a lot of the lessons that we're going to be doing in HTML. Also, when we get into JavaScript as well, the general template of it is that each section or each lesson starts out with a section that highlights the vocabulary that's introduced and the new code that gets introduced. The new code that gets introduced, I'll go over that a little bit later in the video. All right, the vocabulary, there's a lot of it in this one. Obviously, HTML, hypertext markup language. All right, HTML element. Which is a piece of a website, which is marked by a start tag and often closed with an end tag. I'll go over that a little bit later in the video. All right. Same with HTML tag, which is a special set of characters that indicate the start and end of an HTML element in that element's type. And also those website content and website structure. The content is the text and images. The structure is how the content of the website is organized. Those are 2 very important parts of creating a website. All right. Any website that you see on the internet obviously has content on it. Any text and any images would count as website content. So pretty much any website will have content on it. And also too, on a website, just about all websites have a certain structure to it. All right. There's a certain sense of organization to it. And obviously when you're creating a website, it's very important that you have some level of organization on it. And we'll be getting into that in the next several lessons. All right. So, and as I said, the new code I'm going to go over a little bit later in this video. Okay. Now, as I said before, I'll go right into section 2 here. Section 2 deals with the introduction to the web lab. This is important in that when you're working on HTML and even with CSS too, when we get into that, the general format or the layout of the web lab will look like this. All right. And when we get into JavaScript later on, it will look a little similar to this as well, but you'll see some differences. But for right now, focusing on HTML, the general layout of HTML in the web lab will look like this. All right. On the top, you're going to see the directions for each of the sections. All right. And a lot of times you'll see on the right-hand side of the instruction part, you'll see a picture of what the final product should look like. All right. And usually you'll see the directions here in bullet format. Okay. And so as I said, the top half is going to have the directions. The bottom half is going to, it's going to be split into 3 sections. And you'll even see what it will look like. Well, not really what it'll look like, but general idea what it will look like on the right-hand side of the directions up here. Okay. On the bottom half, it's split into 3 particular sections. The files, which is on the left-hand side, the workspace, and the preview section on the right-hand side. All right. The files will have, as you go along on these lessons, you'll see that you'll see more than one file inside the file section. But one thing that you'll notice is there's always going to be one file. All right. The default file is what they call the index. Notice how it's labeled as index.html. Over here on the, you'll see a little down arrow here. When you click on it, a drop-down menu shows up. This allows you to rename it. This allows you to download extra stuff, and this deletes it. We're obviously not going to delete it. When you create more files down the road, obviously you want to have names for those files, but the ability to rename, if you click here and you click on rename, you can edit the name of this file. We're not going to do that for right now. But one thing that you'll see when you have more than one website on here, you'll see more things on the index file. Also, same thing when you're adding CSS to it, which we'll get to later on. And also any image that you add onto your website, it will show up here on the file section. Okay. But for right now, we're, at least for this lesson, and probably even the next lesson, all right, you're not going to see too many things over here. All right. But that will change down the road. Okay. This over here in the center is the workspace. This is very important because this is where you actually add information onto your website. Okay. Now, as we go along, you're going to see a lot of things inside the workspace. Right now, the workspace is blank, and unfortunately, that's not really how HTML code works. All right. And you'll see what I mean a little bit later on in this video. All right. And over on the right-hand side is the preview screen. Whatever you add onto the workspace will show up on the preview screen. Okay. Sometimes you'll have to click on this thing here where it says refresh and save. All right. When you type a lot of things inside the workspace, if it doesn't show up on the preview screen, that's where you hit the refresh and save, and it should show up on the preview screen. All right. Now, what we're going to do here, it just says type something in the workspace. So, all right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put in type something. All right. Now, when I do that, okay, you'll notice that already right away that this line here is highlighted. This where it says number 1 here, it's highlighted in pink or a reddish pink. Okay, that means that there's something wrong with the code, but we'll get into that. All right, but you'll also notice that there's if I were to hit enter, okay, you'll notice that another line will appear. Okay, and each time I hit enter, you'll see another line there that will appear. So there's always an extra line of code that you can always add. All right. And the further down you go, the more lines that get added on. Okay. As you'll see, a lot of websites will have hundreds, if not thousands and thousands um, uh, of lines of code just to program the website. Okay. And I'll show you a little bit how to find out like how many lines of code will actually go into certain websites in a little bit. All right. So notice that when I type something here on the workspace, all right, it doesn't show up on the preview screen. So that means I got to hit refresh and save. There you go. Okay. So whatever you type in the workspace, sometimes it will show up right away on the preview screen, but more often than not, you may have to click on refresh and save. All right. Also, before I go on to the next section, all right, I do want to point out some things up here besides refresh and save. All right. The inspector tool, I'm going to get into that in a few minutes. All right. The version history. All right. If you click on that, all right, if you screw up if you screw up while you're programming the website, if you completely screw it up, you can start over if you want to. Okay. And what that will do is this will show all your versions that you've already created. All right. So I'm going to click start over. And, usually it'll go, the web section will reappear, and then it'll start from the beginning. Okay. Normally, I wouldn't recommend doing this unless you've really messed something up and you just need to start over again. And sometimes that happens. All right. But that's, if you need to just start over again, you just refer to the version history. Okay. And you would just click start over. All right. Add HTML, add CSS, add image. We're going to get to that in future lessons. All right. That stuff would get added onto the index. Okay. So once you're done with that, we'll just go right on to the next section, which is section 3. As I said before, section 3 is a video. It's only a couple minutes long. I would recommend that you watch it on your own. As I said, it's only a couple minutes long, but it kind of just gives a brief overview of a more quick overview of what I'm going through in this video, although there's a lot of things that they don't mention. So that's why I'm creating a separate video that goes into it in a little more detail. All right. So as I said, just watch that video on your own time. Okay. Section 4, all right, shows you a little bit more about or gives you a better idea of what to expect when you're in the web lab. All right. In particular, not only the directions, all right, but also if you look at the workspace, you'll notice that there's a lot more things there. Okay. Not only in the workspace, but also in the preview screen. Now, this stuff here, I'm going to, all this stuff that's up here, I'm going to go over in a few minutes. All right. But this particular section goes over the inspector tool. Okay. And it just shows you a little bit on how that works. Okay. The inspector tool. All right. Also, by the way, when you're going through the directions, you'll see these, you'll notice that may not be a lot of room down here to edit on the workspace, but what you can do, all right, if you understand the directions, you can just click on here and drag it up. Okay, that will allow you to get more room to fiddle around with the workspace. Okay, and if you want to go back down, you just click here and just drag down that way. All right, it is a little tricky to get the hang of, but all in due time, you'll be able to maneuver your way around this website pretty easily. Okay, so and when you look at the directions, it just shows what how the inspector tool works. Okay. You click on inspector off. Okay. What will happen is that if, when you turn the inspector tool on, okay, notice how if I click on this, if I click on line 8 here, where it says this is a web page, it highlights on the preview screen. All right. If I go down to line 10 and I click on it, it highlights. All right. This can be helpful. I'm not really big on this. I find that this to be more of a nuisance, but for some people it is helpful. When you're having a website that's dozens or even more than 100 has more than 100 lines of code on it. When you're working on it on the workspace, you know sometimes having that inspector tool will help you figure out where it is on the actual website itself. All right, because as I said, the preview screen will show you what the web page will actually look like when it's published. Okay. And obviously with the workspace, you can make changes to it if you don't like how it looks. And you'll see what I mean as we go along. All right. As I said, the inspector tool, sometimes it's helpful. Other times it's kind of a pain. All right. But it is there. It can be helpful, if you are trying to match what you're typing in on the workspace to where it shows up on the preview screen. That is where it's helpful. Right. Section 5 is another video. And again, I would recommend that this one's only like a minute and a half long. All right. As I said, you can go through that one on your own time. All right. Section 6. All right. Section 6 is this one is when you're adding actual text to the body of the website. Okay. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, there is a on the workspace, you'll see a lot of different tags on there. All right. And this is important in the sense that whenever you're programming something using HTML, all right, you'll see what are called tags up here. Okay. And you'll see not only opening tags, but closing tags. All right. And this all refers to the actual element of the site. All right. And the way how the tags work, all right, I'll show this here. Okay. And I'll make sure that I post this on the, inside Google Classroom, because you will need it to get a general understanding of how these tags work. All right. All right. So basically the HTML, all right, it's when you're programming using HTML or really using any kind of programming language, all right, it's essentially what you're doing is you're giving directions to the computer. Okay. When you're creating a website or when you're creating an app, what you want to do is you're using code to tell the computer what you want to put there. Okay. And unfortunately, it doesn't work in the sense that you can just type in the directions and that'll be it. All right. What you have to do is that you have to implement with HTML, you have to implement tags on there to give the computer the directions of what you want it to do. All right. And you have to be very specific about it. And you'll see it more with JavaScript, but it's more pronounced. It's more pronounced with JavaScript, but it's definitely, you definitely see a little bit of how that works with HTML as well. All right. Now, as you'll see here, okay, when you're creating an HTML tag, okay, what it does is that it indicates the purpose of a different part of a web page by surrounding them with opening and closing tags. Okay. And inside those opening and closing tags is where you'll see the element. Okay. The element content. Okay. And you'll see here, this is shows you a little bit on how this works. All right. It's just a very basic example. All right. Now you're not going to actually, when you're creating the website, you're not actually going to see like the term HTML element there, but the area between the opening and closing tag, okay, starting with the opening tag and ending with the closing tag, that's an example of an HTML element. Okay. What's inside the tags is the element content. Okay. But the important thing here is that whenever you're entering in like a line of code, all right, if it's like a line of text, for instance, all right, most instances you would put a paragraph tag there. Okay. It starts out with the opening tag will look like this, all right, where you have like a greater than, with greater than, less than symbols with a P inside of it. The P stands for paragraph. Now, not everything is just a P. Okay, you can put there's other letters that you can put if you want to implement something other than a paragraph. We will get to that. All right. The closing tag will have the greater than, less than symbols there, but also will have a backward slash there before the letter P. That's an indication that you want to close the tag. All right. And again, this may seem very confusing at first, but again, this is something that you'll get the hang of once we really get into HTML coding. All right. Now, a few things here. All right. You'll notice that when we get back here to section 6 here, you'll see that there's already some tags implemented there. All right. These are called starter tags. All right. These will be, when you're using HTML, this stuff will already be on there when you get started. Okay. And trust me, it makes it a lot easier, because normally when you're adding a web page from scratch, you generally have to add the starting, you would have to add the starting tags, or else the web page isn't going to come up. All right. And there are a few, there's actually 4 specific starter tags here that are implemented. Not all of them have closing tags on them. 3 of them do have closing tags. All right. But we're going to go over each one real quick. All right. The first one is the doc type HTML. What that does is that it tells the computer that this is a document written in HTML. All right. There are many different versions of HTML that are out there. All right. And there are dozens of them. And what this does, the doc type is one version of it. All right. And this particular code just tells the computer that this is a document written in HTML. It's like a specific HTML code, specific HTML programming language. Because as I said, there are many different types of HTML out there. All right. The HTML, which is right below the doc type, by the way, the doc type does not require a closing tag. All right. All that does is that it just tells, as I said, just tells the computer that it's a, that this is going to be written in the doc type version of HTML. Notice that it has a exclamation point right before the word doc type, but you don't really need to concern yourself with that. All right. But as I said, it's going to be there when you start on a web page. Okay. You don't need to put a closing tag for the doc type. All right. The next one here is HTML. It indicates the beginning of your code written in HTML. Now, this one will have a closing tag, and it's actually the closing tag is going to be at the bottom of the page, okay? So really any website you create, the very last line of code needs to be the HTML tag, or the closing HTML tag, all right? This closing HTML tag is going to be the last line that's going to show up on your web page, okay? If it isn't, then you did something wrong. Okay, so just remember that this closing HTML tag should be the last line of code. All right. And as I said, that just indicates the beginning of your code written in HTML. The next one is head tag. Okay. Contains information sometimes called metadata about your web page. All right. Now, the term metadata is a term that's used quite a bit in computer programming. All right. We're not going to get too in depth into that, but there are a few things that can go inside the head tags. Now, notice that the opening tag for the opening head tag is right underneath the opening HTML tag. Okay. You start out with the doc type HTML. The second line is going to be the opening HTML tag. And the third line is going to be the opening head tag. Notice that the closing head tag is right underneath the opening head tag. All right. There are a few things that you can put inside the head tag. All right. Usually that's the 2 most common ones are you could put the title of the page inside the head tag. All right. Because all websites have a title to them. All right. And also, this is where you would put a style sheet in. Okay. And a style sheet, we'll get to that in another video. But when you're linking CSS to your HTML, all right, it's linked via a style sheet. And usually you would put that inside the head tags. All right. We'll get to that when I get to the video on CSS. All right. Now, And notice that, as I said before, the closing head tag is usually right underneath the opening head tag. Anything inside the head tag would, like I said, it's either like the title or the style sheet. There's a few other things you could put in there as well, but generally you don't put that much inside the head tags. All right. But the next one is the body tag. This one's very important. This contains all the main contents of your web page. So anything that you put in your web page needs to be in between the body tags. Okay. Now, on this example that's up here, okay, there's only one line between the opening tag and the closing tag. As you'll see, there's, web pages will have hundreds, if not thousands, of lines in between the body tags. Okay. All the content that goes into your web page, like the images, the text, all right, that goes in between the body tags. All right. That's very important, because if you don't put all of your information that you want in your web page in between the body tags, nothing's going to show up on your web page. Okay. So it's got to make sure everything's got to be in between the opening body tag and the closing body tag. Okay. And the last two lines of the HTML code on the workspace, like I said, the very last line is going to be the closing HTML tag. The next to last line is going to be the closing body tag. All right. Okay. So that's a little bit how that works. I will post this on to Google Classroom. I'll post this onto Google Classroom, just so you have a little cheat sheet to work off of to have a general understanding of this. Okay. Now, going back to section 6 here. All right. What we're going to do here, it just says write 3 separate sentences about any topic you like inside the body tags of the web page. So we'll just, for right now, we'll just do this. All right. We'll put like sentence 1, sentence 2, and sentence 3. All right. Now notice that when I add these inside the body tags, they show up on the preview screen. All right. However, as you'll see, it's not really what I want. Okay. Because it's all, it all just shows up on one line. That's not really what I want here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the next section here, section 7. All right. And I am going to implement paragraph tags. Okay. And if I go back to that, if I go back here, all right, we'll show you a little bit on how that works. Okay. Anytime that you have a line of code, all right, or in this case, if, later on when we get to actual paragraphs, okay, if you have code that wants to go into a specific paragraph, what you have to do is that you have to implement opening and closing paragraph tags. So we'll show you how that works. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to place the text that I just wrote inside at least 2 separate paragraphs by surrounding it with opening and closing paragraph tags. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, all right, is I'm going to go to the beginning of sentence 1 inside of the workspace. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the symbol right here. Okay. All right. That's just the less than symbol. I'm going to type in the letter P, and then I'm going to put in the greater than symbol. All right. So it's, like I said, that's how that works. That's the opening paragraph tag. And then I'm going to go to the end of sentence 1, and I'm going to implement a closing paragraph tag. So I use the less than symbol, and then I'm going to use a backward slash, which should be right next to the shift key on the right-hand side. All right. And I'm going to put in the letter P and then the closing tag. Okay. So notice that once I do that, sentence 1 will be its own paragraph. Okay. I'm going to do the same for sentence 2. All right. I'm going to go less than the letter P. Now notice that when I do this, a drop-down menu appears, okay? And you can, it'll notice like all the things that you could put in there that begin with the letter P. And as you'll see, there's a lot of different things, okay? All right. But for paragraph, for HTML code, you just would have to put in the letter P. Now, if I select the letter P, all right, I can do that, but really that's not going to do much. So I'm just going to put in the greater than symbol, all right? So that's the opening tag for sentence 2. The closing tag, so this, /P, closing tag, okay? Now, notice how each sentence is its own line. Now, you probably do want to, technically you don't really have to put one in for the third sentence since it's already on its own paragraph, but I'm going to put one in here anyways. I'm going to put an opening and closing tag here, all right? So that's how the paragraph tags work, okay? There are, as I said, there are dozens, if not more than 100 different types of tags that you could put, put inside your web page, all right? Now notice that the paragraph tags don't show up on the preview screen, which is what you want, right? If it's sometimes if you go onto a website, you may see that the code is you may see like a tag that looks like this that's on a web page. That means it's somebody coded it wrong. Okay, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. All right, so that's basically a section 7 right there. All right, now section 8. All right. Section 8, all right, what you'll see here, and what we're going to be doing a lot, not just with HTML, but also with JavaScript, all right, is that you're going to see a lot of instances where we have to fix broken code, all right? And there's a term for it, okay, fixing broken code, that's called debugging. It's a term that you're going to hear a lot of down the road, all right? A bug is like an actual problem on the with the coding of the computer, and actually fixing that problem is referred to as debugging. All right. So this one is section 8 here is a debugging example. All right. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to fix the broken code here. It says fix the code, broken code so that the web page displays correctly. All right. So it says that this sentence should be on its own. So should this one. What's wrong with this sentence? So what's wrong here, if you look inside the workspace on lines 6 through 8, okay, is that there's opening paragraph tags for that first sentence, but there's no closing paragraph tag. So what I should do is put in where it says this sentence should be on its own, because as you'll see here on the preview screen, it's not, okay? It shares a line with this sentence here, so should this one. So what I'm going to do here is at the end of this sentence where it says this sentence should be on its own, the end of that sentence, I'm going to put in a closing paragraph tag like this. All right. And then notice that when I do that, you'll see that line 7 turns pink. Okay. And that means when you see that, that means there's something wrong with the code. All right. Sometimes it'll run, but a lot of times the program won't run if there's like red there or pink. Okay. So what I need to do, and what the program is telling you, is that something needs to be fixed. So what I'm going to do here on line 7 is I'm going to put in a opening tag at the beginning of that sentence like that. Okay. And notice that line 8 or line 9 actually has, it shows up in pink. Okay. Sometimes one thing you want to be careful of is that when you see like a pink line like this, that doesn't mean that the error is on that line. All right. Sometimes the error could be anywhere above that line. Okay. So if I look on line 8, all right, you'll notice that there's something, when it says what's wrong with this sentence. Okay. What happened here is that the opening, what should be the opening tag, has a backward slash on it, which you can't have. Okay. So we got to get rid of that backward slash that's right here. Okay. All right. There's still something wrong here. If we look at the closing paragraph or the closing tag, you'll see it just has the letter P inside the greater than, less than symbols. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a backward slash here like that. Okay. Goes away. All right. So this sentence should be on its own, which it is. So should this one. And we just fixed when it says what's wrong with this sentence. Well, we just fixed it. All right. What was wrong with the sentence was that the opening tag had a closing tag symbol on it, and there was the closing tag symbol was not on the closing tag over here. So we just added it. All right. As I said, this can be very, very confusing at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's fairly simple. All right. So we will be working on this in a little more detail in over the next few assignments. All right. And then we'll be getting into CSS, which is basically adding, adding a design to the website, making the website look more appealing. Okay. HTML just deals with images and text. Okay. So, but we'll be getting into all that over the next few weeks. All right. And if you have any questions on it, please let me know. All right. Thank you very much.